hello, welcome. Now, as I promised, this is our third Australian comedy episode. So I hope you're ready. We decided I would get this one, the Christmas one, because I know Her Infernal Majesty was quite eager to do Christmas again. She enjoyed doing it last year, but I'm afraid we all had to put our feet down and say Henry V is not a Christmas film. You know, she was a bit narky about that, but we've got Clive James for you. We've got Clive James and the funniest piece of writing ever, full on, no question asked, hands down, funniest piece of writing. You may as well go home and in the world. Just is. No argument. I will die on this hill. Talking about hills. Billycart Hill is what we're doing. Before we do that, just a couple of things from Cockie Press that we have. We have our creative writing book. So if you're really wanting to start out your creative writing journey in 2022, this is a great place to start. So there are links below. Also, to help your creative writing journey in 2022, we have upgraded the templates. I'm not sure how well you can see this with the lights, but this is one of our new templates. It's double-sided. Down there, don't mind what it says on the bottom. That's just for me, so I don't stick it in an envelope. They're laminated. You can get these with free shipping. And they are templates to help you with your writing. This one is a character arc tarot spread. And if people like the tarot spreads, I'll do some more. Just pop across to my Instagram page and let me know if you'd like more tarot spread. I'll work some up. But there are all sorts of things. There are checklists for writing genre fiction to help you with your planning, to help you with literary fiction, to help you create characters, to help you with your research, to help you with your beta readers, to get feedback from them. There are a whole load of them. There is some of the templates are in this book. One of them is only in this book. They are hard copy, which comes with free shipping, so on cardstock and laminated, or digital download, so you get it instantly. You can print it as many times as you like. So they're all on the Cockie Press website. That's the little advertising part out of the way. The way that I fund these videos is via my business, so that's why we always include it. Now, Billycart Hill. I'm going to have to put my glasses on for this because it's a big passage. And in all honesty, this entire video is an excuse for me to read Billycart Hill for you, okay? I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to read Billycart Hill, and then I'm going to talk about why it works so brilliantly as comedy to give you an understanding of how you write comedy from the best comic writer, and also make it all right for copyright reasons, because this way I'm allowed to read it because I'm doing it as an educational thing, whereas if I just read it and go, I'll get in trouble. So there we go. So glasses. Yes, and this is why I don't wear my glasses on film, because we get all this reflection. So this is Billycart Hill. If you don't know who Clive James is, this is from the Unreliable Memoirs. Clive James is a Sydney-born author. He comes from Kogarah. He's a kid from Kogarah. He was born in 1939. He grew up during... His early childhood was during the war. His father was overseas. His father died during the war. And he was brought up by his widowed mother. He's an only child, and the Unreliable Memoirs are his memoirs of growing up in Sydney before he leaves the country and becomes an expat author, celebrity, writer in England. So this is a wartime, post-war, mostly post-war, because he's only 4, 5, 6 when the war ends. So it's mostly post-war Australia childhood. Okay, so I'm going to read the Billycart Hill. Now, Billycart Hill, this is a small part of a much, much larger chapter. The actual joke of it, it's the end of the chapter. He's explaining billycart racing on this hill. Now, Sydney is a city with quite a few hills in it. It's not exactly flat. So the idea, we're talking about hills. Now, I come from a town which is definitely not flat, lots of hills. So in my mind, and this is encouraged by this, I am using what is familiar to me. So to me, Billycart Hill looks like this, okay? Like that, because that is what hills look like in my town. Okay, we have a hill that is so steep that the top of it is stairs. Okay, that's how steep one of the hills are in my town. So it's only the one. There are hills that you do not walk up because they don't have proper footpaths because they're too steep. Okay, this is in my head how that works, and Clive encourages you to think like this with the way that he writes this. But without further ado, Billycart Hill. The Irene Street corner was made doubly perilous by Mrs. Braithwaite's poppies. Mrs. Braithwaite inhabited the house on the corner. She was a known witch whom we often persecuted after dark by throwing gravel on her roof. It was widely believed she poisoned cats. Certainly she was a great ringer-upper of the police. In retrospect, I can see that she could hardly be blamed for this, but her behaviour seemed at the time like an irrational hatred of children. She was a renowned gardener. Her front yard was like the cover of a seed catalogue. Extending her empire, she had flower beds even on the 2 front strips, one on the Sunbeam Avenue side and the other on the Irene Street side, i.e. both outside edges of the famous corner. The flower beds held the area's best collection of poppies. She had been known to phone the police if even one of these was illicitly picked. At the time I am talking about, Mrs. Braithwaite's poppies were all in bloom. It was essential to make the turn without hurting a single hair of a poppy's head. Otherwise, the old lady would probably drop the telephone and come out shooting. Usually, when the poppies were in bloom, nobody dared make the turn. I did, not out of courage, but because in my ponderous cart there was no real danger of going wrong. The daredevil leanings over and the dramatic skids were just the icing on the cake. I should have left it at that, but I got ambitious. One Saturday afternoon, when there was a particularly large turnout, I got sick of watching the bull race carts howling to glory down the far side. I organised the slower carts like my own into a train. Every cart except mine was deprived of its front axle and loosely bolted to the cart in front. The whole assembly was about a dozen carts long, with a big box cart at the back. The back cart I dubbed the chuck wagon, using terminology I had picked up from Hopalong Cassidy's serial at the pictures. I was the only one alone on his cart. Behind me there were 2 or even 3 to every cart until you got to the chuck wagon, which was crammed full of little kids, some of them so small that they were holding toy koalas and sucking dummies. From its very first run down the far side, my supercart was a triumph. Even the adults who had been hosing us called their families out to marvel as we went streaming by. On the supercart's next run, there was still more to admire, since even the top flight bull ride race riders had demanded to have their vehicles built into it, thereby heightening its tone, swelling its passenger list, and multiplying its already impressive output of decibels. Once again, I should have left well alone. The thing was already famous. It had everything but a dining car. Why did I ever suggest that we should transfer it to the near side and try the Irene Street turn? With so much inertia, the supercar started slowly, but it accelerated like a piano falling out of a window. Long before we reached the turn, I realized that there had been a serious miscalculation. The miscalculation was all mine, of course. Sir Isaac Newton would have got it right. It was too late to do anything except pray. Leaning into the turn, I skidded my own cart to safety around the usual way. The next few segments followed me, but with each segment describing an arc of a slightly larger radius than the one in front. First gradually, then with a stunning finality, the monster lashed its enormous tail. The air was full of flying ball bearings, bits of wood, big kids, little kids, koalas and dummies. Most disastrously of all, it was full of poppy petals. Not a bloom escaped the side. Those of us who could still run scattered to the winds, dragging our wounded with us. The police spent hours visiting all parents in the district, warning them that the Billycart era was definitely over. It was a police car that took Mrs. Braithwaite away. There was no point waiting for the ambulance. She could walk all right. It was just that she couldn't talk. She stared straight ahead, her mouth slightly open. And that is Billycart Hill. So, why does it work as a piece of comedy? Well, I'll tell you about that. I'll just take my glasses off so that we do not see my lights in the background. And okay, so it's the part of what makes this work is the setup. The whole chapter is talking about billycarts. Okay, it's actually, the chapter itself is called Billycart Hill. Okay, it's called Billycart Hill. The whole chapter, it's got a build up of how they're making billycarts and riding billycarts, and the fact that young Clive is a little bit younger than the other big boys, but he's trying to keep up with them, and they've got better billycarts than him. And he has given us the stakes. When we start with Mrs. Braithwaite, those are the stakes. Mean old lady on the corner, big flower garden, in flower, when she's at her meanest. And everybody's had one of these neighbours, so everyone knows what this is like, having one of those like crazy neighbours who's like just really hates kids. Everyone's had that old person who really hates kids neighbour, where it's like, oh no, the ball went into their yard. Well, that's it. We've got to play something else now. Everyone has had one of them. They exist. They're just like, you know, the secret is they were bad-tempered young people and they're bad-tempered old people. So, you know, Mrs. Braithwaite was a bitch when she was young too. So, you know, because apparently everyone's personality is set by the time they're about 30. So if you're a nice, cheerful, positive person, you're going to be a nice, cheerful, positive old person. If you're a miserable git as a young person, you're going to be a miserable git as an old person. And it's going to be more noticeable. But she's one of those old ladies who hates children. Her flower garden is in bloom. Now, so those are the stakes. We don't mention Mrs. Braithwaite's garden for some time later until it becomes pertinent. We are not going to just keep mentioning this in. We have given ourselves our stakes. The next thing we do is that Clive is a bit of a risk taker. Well, he thinks he is. He likes to think of himself as a risk taker. This is because he takes the corner even when even when the other kids won't. But that's because he knows he's not actually going to hit anything. He likes courting that, and he wants to be noticed. That's the other thing. His daredevil leanings over and the dramatic skids. That's to get noticed. He wants to be noticed by the big kids. Okay. So then and here we get, I should have left it at that, but I got ambitious. And he uses ambitious because as we remember, Caesar was ambitious. So he got ambitious. This cannot end well. This cannot end well. Once you say I got ambitious, this is like, oh, we are setting ourselves up for the biggest fall ever. I got ambitious. Now, he describes making his train. He's got all the slower carts like his, bolted them together. He's being very methodical. He's being very scientific. He's giving us all this engineering sort of parlance, the engineering of a 6-year-old. I'm not going to suggest that any of this is particularly sophisticated, but it is in the mind of a small child too. Like, this is how small children think. They're doing something massive. They've usually cobbled together a few little bits and pieces from anything, terminology. This is a 6-year-old's engineering. So because it's got a 6-year-old's stakes of a flower garden and a mean old lady. It's got 6-year-old's engineering. He's not giving us a adult view of this. He's giving us an internal view as a little kid. This makes it quite funny, and so that's an important part of it. He's also, he's using the chuck wagon that he's picked up. It's like, this is our chuck wagon. This is the big heavy one at the back, and he's also got talking about how many children he has in this. There are 2 or 3 on every cart until you get to the chuck wagon, which was crammed full of little kids. Some of them so small they were holding toy koalas and sucking dummies. They're toddlers. Okay? He's crammed this chuck wagon full of kids, and some of them are toddlers. The dummies and the koalas are what are called objective correlatives. Okay, it's when something stands in for something else. He's not saying toddlers, because in all honesty, if you sort of think about it, without the objective correlative, then he's going to smash up a whole load of billycarts with little kids in, really little kids, which, and that's actually kind of, there's going to be lots of tears, but we don't see that. We have the objective correlative. We have the dummies and the koalas. Dummies and koalas are neutral, therefore we can maintain the joke. This isn't, in and of itself, if you watch this actually happening, okay, there's a degree of schadenfreude, and I'm sure a lot of people laugh, but a lot of adults would have come out and been, picking up toddlers and, quite angry. So we have an objective correlative. We have the dummies and the koalas. It helps it provides distance. Objective correlatives are an actually really great literary device to create emotion or to stand in for something. They're used all the time if you can work out how to use them, because they're not easy to use, but you work out how to use them effectively. You don't have to tell anything because you're showing it. You are showing it all the way without actually directly describing what you're showing. They're a really, really brilliant tool if you can make them work. They are hard to make work. Clive makes them work really, really well. So we've got the first run of the supercart, and it's doing wonderfully. The adults are watching. It's like, wow, this is good. He's getting the adulation that he likes, that he wants. He's being admired. Okay, so this, he did a couple of runs, And then the older kids, they want to have a go too, so they get theirs built in. So it's obviously taking a bit of time to do this. So there's, you know, you've got to build everyone's Billycarts into this thing. Okay? Because hauling it back up the hill, that must have been like, how hard that would have been. So it's this is the work of a long afternoon, but it's all condensed down. The speed of it is part of what makes this work so well. Okay, so already, so the older kids are on the thing. They're going down. It's fun. It's great fun. They're having a wonderful time. And he says, the thing was already famous. It had everything but the dining car. He has his adulation. But remember, he is ambitious. He is ambitious. And this will be his downfall as much as it is Caesar's. And he's done that. He's used that word deliberately because he wants every single person reading the book to know Mark Antony's speech of Caesar was ambitious. At least according to the conspirators. So he's relying on you, the audience, to have a certain level of literary knowledge. He is for all his flippancy, Clive James is a highly, highly literate writer, but he does it with such a light touch that there is no way that you feel stupid or as if you are missing the joke. Because ambitious, you're going to get the joke. You're going to get the joke a little bit more if you realise that he's set himself up as Caesar, that this is going to go badly. But he does this with such a light touch that you still get the joke anyway. That is how referencing should go. Okay? None of this like, what was it I read? Listen to. I couldn't be bothered buying it or giving it the time. I listened to Donna Tartt's The Secret History, and it's like, oh wow, you just rewrote The Great Gatsby. Woo! Clearly very obvious. That's not how you do literary references. You do it like this. One word. And he's already linked himself with Caesar because Caesar was ambitious. Okay, so now he decides, we're going to raise the stakes even higher. I'm already famous. I'm going to be legendary. This is, I'm going to be legend. We're going to take the Irene Street corner. Now, we haven't mentioned Irene Street yet since our initial indication of why that is important. So now we're going to take the Irene Street corner, and he laid out so specifically why it was important at the beginning. If you put that in the middle, which a lot of writers would do, they would take the Irene Street corner and plonk it in the middle and completely ruin the momentum of the joke. The part of this is all about timing. We already know the setup. Irene Street is sacrosanct. You do not mess about with Irene Street. He is now messing about with Irene Street. This can't end well. This could end so funny, but it can't end well. Okay, everybody knows this. He's already laid the stakes. This either is a triumph or a tragedy, and now given that it is a comedy, it cannot be a triumph, so it has to be a tragedy. So we are watching this joke go down with all the momentum of a falling piano, which is a great metaphor, because once a piano's falling, piano falling off a roof, there's nothing stopping that. We are talking about an unstoppable force now. An unstoppable force and an immovable object. This is going to be good. So we know this. He is putting little cues in throughout the joke about where the joke is going. And they build and build and build. He builds the stakes, he builds the imagery, and this is why it works so well. And then we realize miscalculation. So we've got a falling piano. The thing is moving. It's moving, and he's realized he's miscalculated. It is in mid-flight. There is nothing young Clive can do except watch in horror as this thing unfolds. He's a 6-year-old. Of course this was going to happen. There's an inevitability of it. There's the inevitability of a falling piano. okay, that is going to go crash at the bottom. He's miscalculated. He's not realized that the length of the thing is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, the curve as it goes round. So he gets round safely. The first few get round safely, and then and the way he describes it, the monster. This thing should not exist. This is a monster. This is an aberration. This is Frankenstein's creature. This is a monster, and it is an angry monster. It lashed its enormous tail. Phew, it just goes through it. It goes through it, and of course, it's not a monster. It's a billycart train full of children. But we call it a monster, and so again we are removing ourselves from the fact that there are a whole lot of screaming panic kids who are realizing what's happening, okay? But the monster lashed its tail. So think of the noise. You've got the bull races, you've got the sound of the billycarts, you've got the screaming kids or giggling kids, probably giggling until they realize this thing's going to crash. There is just a predictable inevitability about this. But the monster lashed its tails. This thing is unnatural. It is a monster. It should not exist in nature. And then the air was full of ball bearings, bits of wood, big kids, little kids, koalas and dummies. So everything, the billycarts are being broken apart, the children are going flying, the koalas and dummies that's our objective correlative for the toddlers. There are big kids, there are little kids, they're all right for themselves, but these are the toddlers. We're not mentioning the toddlers because that's kind of too, they're in the chuck wagon. They have like no hope. This is a train wreck, like a legitimate train wreck. Okay? And not the least. So, I mean, that's bad enough. The train wreck is bad enough. And the use of the dummies and the koalas sort of hide the screaming, crying toddlers, okay? So that, otherwise this is not funny. This is like kind of horrific. But when we use the objective correlative, it's funny. It's koalas and dummies. It's, it gives us that distance. That's the difference between comedy and tragedy is very, very thin. Very, very thin. Okay, and then, but most disastrously of all, it was also full of poppy petals. So there are everything. The poppies have just been wiped out. And it's interesting that she's got poppies. It's like, basically he's created the Somme. He has created the Somme. The carnage is incredible and it's full of poppies. Whether they were poppies or not is sort of rather actually, a moot point. The fact that he wrecked her flowers, the fact that he makes it the poppies means that we now look at this and it's Flanders Fields. He wants us to put poppies and wreckage and disaster together. And what's disaster? The Somme. Okay? That's what he wants us to put together. And by using poppy petals, he's putting it together. We know without him describing it, that this looks like the Somme. This looks awful. It's just carnage. Okay, those of us who could still run scattered to the winds, dragging our wounded with us. So they've picked up their siblings or whatever and taken them home crying and desperate to like, oh no, we're in so much trouble. It's like, there is no illusion that they are in so much trouble. They are in it up to their necks. They're in it up to their eyes, I think, actually. They are in so much trouble. And Clivey Boy is in over his head. The police spent hours. So that's our joke. And then we've got the come down off the joke. The height of the joke, the crescendo of the joke is the ball bearings and the wood and the children, big kids, little kids, dummies, koalas. That's the height of the joke. That's the climax. But you can't end it on the climax. You need to have the come down, the denouement. The police spent hours visiting all the parents in the district, warning the Billycart era was definitely over. So this is the story about how Clive James categorically destroyed billycarting in Kogarah, or in his little part of Kogarah. So there you go. And then Mrs. Braithwaite, who was so precious about her plants, the police car took her away. They couldn't even wait for the ambulance. She is so deeply in shock that she cannot speak. So it begins and ends with her. She is the stakes. I mean, she's okay. On one level, she's a poor old lady who's been tormented by children. On another level, she's a nasty old lady who torments the children, and the children won. Now, if her reaction had been different, it wouldn't be funny and it wouldn't be a decent come down. I mean, and it does leave you feeling a little bit, as Clive no doubt felt, a little bit guilty over that one. And that actually is part of what makes it work so well, is yes, she got it, but you do feel a bit guilty. It was kind of like, oh, I took it too far. I took that one just a little bit too far. So it doesn't actually stop Clive being a little bastard of a child. But that is the Unreliable Memoirs by Clive James. That is Billycart Hill, if you'd like to read it. It is the final in our tripart comedy series. Definitely recommend. Of all the 3 books that we have done, this is the one that I would say, read this one. This one is so good. There is no film of this one. That makes it different to the others that we've seen. I don't think it is be filmable. Just so you know, when Clive James went back to Billycart Hill as a grown man, this hill that he doesn't even really talk about the scale of the hill, but you assume it's a hill like this, right? You assume it's one of those really steep Sydney hills. And he went back years later. In his mind, it was a really steep Sydney hill. Pancake when he went back. Just slight nothing. Barely a rise. But it's the excitement of a child that makes this work so well. And that's what makes it so readable. It really does have the excitement, the innocence, and the naughtiness of an Australian childhood. So I really hope you enjoy that, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other materials to help with your writing.